Welcome to episode 187 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, and more. I want to remind you that with my friends at Simple Truth Theatre, I will be bringing my solo play, The Commandment, to the Toronto Fringe this summer. The Commandment is about what happens when an atheist discovers that he's been chosen to deliver God's new commandment, and will be presented at the Tarragon Extra space. You can find out all about it by finding it in your Fringe listings or by following me on my social links on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby, and you can also find details on simpletruththeatre.com. And as always, if you want to drop me a line about the podcast, you can find it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and the website is stageworthypodcast.com. Let's talk about Today Takes. Today Takes is an app and website that offers easy and affordable access to a wide variety of must-see cultural performances, from plays and musicals to dance, opera, comedy, immersive experiences, and beyond. And right now, there is so much on Today Takes that it is almost impossible for me to pick a couple. You should really make it your one-stop shop, because you will find tickets for shows at the Luminato Festival, Soul Pepper, the Stratford Festival, and so much more. And remember that you can get $5 off your first purchase on Today Takes if you use the code STAGEWORTHY when you check out. Today Takes makes ticket buying simple, and you can purchase tickets in less than 30 seconds. Get it on iOS and Android, or go to todaytakes.com and remember to use the code STAGEWORTHY when you make your first purchase on the app. This week, my guests are Kaho Koda and Sachi Lovatt from Human Burrito's Decaying Tongue, which will be presented at the Randolph Theatre as part of the 2019 Toronto Fringe Festival. So why don't we start by talking about what Decaying Tongue is about?
Yes, for sure. Do you want to?
Well, you're the writer, I think.
I should
more appropriate.
Okay, for sure. So Decaying Tongue is about a Japanese woman named Aya. So she has lived in both Japan and the Western world. And so it's kind of like a self-exploration of her going through different environments. So she has an internal cultural identity, I guess, struggle. And so we look at how she interacts not just with friends and the environment, but with her very traditional Japanese family. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the show's about exploring that. And yeah, do you have something to add?
Well, like when I saw the breakdown, I was like, this is me. I'm half Japanese. Mm-hmm. And then like I could identify with her, Aya, the main character, struggling between this like Western half and Japanese half. In the script, she's fully ethnically Japanese, but like culturally, she's both. And and I relate to the culturally and also biracial as well. So that, yeah,
nice.
It's brought out to me.
What was the inspiration for writing this?
For writing, I guess it is kind of a storytelling of what I've been experiencing just all my life. So, for example, when I was young, I lived in the States for a little bit, till 5 years old to 7 years old. So I developed this thing where I was praised for being very unique, being outspoken, all these things in the States. And then when I flew back to Japan, and you know, it's where I'm from supposedly, and first time going to school, and I really stood out, and I was bullied for it because the cultural norm in Japan, it's more conforming to society, conforming to, you know, the community and the teamwork is more important than the individual. So that was the first ever culture shock. Like, I didn't even know that was a culture shock. Yeah. But that's something that I realized when I was very young, at the age of 7. And so with the environment that I grew up in, I moved to Canada when I was in high school. And so I established, well, I had that same experience again, coming back to a Western culture. And then now I was like, oh, wow, everyone's so individualistic. When I was really used to way it was done in Japan. And so I guess throughout my life, cultural identity has always been like a topic in my mind. And it's something I'm really passionate about, 100%. And so I decided it's kind of the first piece I finished writing, you know, like I always try to write something and it starts, but it doesn't really end. But this is my passion project. So yeah.
It sounds like having started, spending some time in the States and then Japan and then back in Canada, that there was a real like elastic sort of like going one way and then the other, like individual, then society, and then individual again. You spoke about how difficult it was to go from being praised for being so individualistic from the States when you went to Japan, and then having to relearn how to be society first or the group first. Yeah. And then coming back to Canada, was that difficult?
It was difficult. It was a huge transition because in my mindset, like I lived in Japan for 10 years at that point and I came here. So it was all about the teamwork. Like a really weird example is even going to the bathroom together, like all the girls going to the bathroom together. That was like a whole thing. Yeah. And then I saw how people interacted with each other, very individualistic, but also, if you say it in a very negative term, kind of selfish, you know, it's always about me. Yeah. In a way. And it was also hard for me to, I guess, adapt into that environment because I moved here with my family, my mom and my dad. So I would go home and I would tell them about what I experienced that day that was off for me. And my parents would say things like, oh, yeah, that's weird. Or, like there was that coming back to more some kind of a Japanese world back home. But that did switch when my parents left and they went home to Japan when I was in university. So that was when I kind of started establishing my own cultural identity, being on my own, living with international students from across the world, living with Canadians, all of that.
And are your parents still in Japan?
Yeah, all my family is in Japan. Yeah, they stayed.
Well, out of curiosity, what brought your family to the States, then back to Japan, then to Canada again?
It was primarily my father's work. So any moving was because my dad was transferred to a specific location. So we're a tight family. And I think it was easier to move to Montreal just because I lived in the States when I was young, where I picked up my English. I became bilingual. And it is a huge asset to have in Japan, being able to speak in English. Sure. And my parents wanted me to keep that. So I would go to a Japanese public school during the day. And then after school, I would go to an English class to just, like playing games and writing diaries, reading English books just to keep my English. And because I was good at it and I was able to maintain that, when he was transferred to Montreal, it was kind of an easier transition. Okay, you can speak English. You do understand it. So it was easier in those terms, but culturally a bit different.
Was the French aspect of Quebec society difficult for you?
Very difficult. I didn't know how French it was until I landed at the airport. And it was just instant. I wanted to go home, back to Japan.
Just almost immediately?
Immediately. Just all the signs in French, all the announcements, like everything was just in French. And I knew it was going to be French, but not to that extent. And also, Quebecois people are different. I had no idea where I was going into. Yeah. I mean, I was living in the English bubble while I was there because, school is English, all of that. But also when I was trying to find work after graduating, it was just like I spoke a little bit of French, it's just enough to get by to, waitress or like that was fine. But living there and, trying to figure out my career, it wasn't the best for me.
It's very difficult to do in Montreal if you don't have the French.
Exactly. Like any job description, the first thing is bilingualism, English, French is required. Yeah. And so and then Toronto's right there. It's English, lots of opportunities, lots of theater scenes, like art scenes happening. So it was kind of like, okay, I guess I could move to Toronto. Nothing's tying me down to Montreal. And so 2-3 years ago, I just made the move.
Okay. I want to come back to that. Sachi, what was, you spoke a bit about the duality of being half Japanese and how you were drawn to Aya's story in this play. Can you talk a little bit about like your journey similar to Kaho's? Was there, like, where did you grow up in Toronto?
Sure. Oh, I really related when, Kaho, you said that you went to Japanese school during the day in Japan and then English school afterwards, and I was the flip of that. So I grew up in Ottawa. My dad's from England. He's English, and my mom's Japanese. And then, it was a reverse. At school, it was actually mostly French, like in French immersion, and then Saturday morning Japanese language school. And it was really tough for my mom to keep that up for me. I really praise her, because I would resist so much to going to Japanese school, speaking Japanese to her, especially in front of my friends or on the phone in front of my friends. I would switch to English, even though I never speak to her in English. Well, back then.
Sure.
So it was the reverse. And there's even a thing in the play of having two different types of lunch, like a sandwich or a onigiri, a Japanese rice ball. And I love both. But I would kind of be ashamed of eating my Japanese rice ball at my English school.
Sure.
So there's that. But contrary to Kaho, I was born and raised in Ottawa, so I'm very stable that way. But went to Japan a lot in the summers. I went to school in Japan for grade 1 in one summer, and also the reverse, bullying as well. Part of it was superficial, my hair is brown and they got made fun of my hair, for example. That was less cultural, just maybe more just
kids being kind of
being
cool.
kids.
Yeah, that made me different because I look different.
Sure.
But otherwise, yes, stable in Ottawa.
You were in French immersion.
Yeah.
And so was that, it's one thing to go back and forth between two languages, but did you find that you were doing French at school, English with your father, and Japanese with your mother?
Yeah. It was fine for me. I think it helped that reading and writing were always strong suits of mine. I have other half Japanese friends whose maybe brother developed language later in life, and so they pulled them out of French immersion. I personally think that's a myth. I took this I went to McGill as well, and I took this class on the psychology of bilingualism, and it's fascinating. But the thesis is basically the number of languages. It doesn't hinder anything. It might be slower to start initially, but once you're over that hurdle at a certain point in childhood, you're free. Anyway, so the 3 languages was fine. It was normal. And our family friends were also, there were 3 families, and the mothers were all half Japanese.
Okay.
And so all the kids were, it was half Indian, half English for me, and half French Canadian for another family. And it was English, French, Japanese kind of mixed up all the time.
Okay.
And it was seamless. It was normal for me. I understand that it's not normal for a lot of people, but it was seamless.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
For me.
Cool. And what is it that brought you each to theater?
Ooh.
Do
you remember what your theater origin story is? What made you want to do it? What your first exposure was?
Yeah. Well, I was an extremely shy child to the point that I wouldn't speak. When I was 6 or 7 outside of the home. And so my parents enrolled me in a after-school drama program to help coax me out of my shell. And so that's what did it, really. And then I went to an arts high school for drama, because a lot of people at that after-school drama school were pumped into the high school after. That's where it began, So around 9, because I was so shy. Yeah.
Well, was there, at a certain point, you go from that's a thing that you do to bring you out of your shell to now you have to make decisions about university and what you want to do with the rest of your life. Was there ever any resistance to, what made you decide that the theater was something that you wanted to do even in your adult life?
I don't know if it was a rational reason. It's something I always wanted to do since I was a child. And probably part of it is the self-expression that I didn't have or when I was younger, or I found it easier to express myself when I was not being myself, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Even though it's always yourself. Yeah. And then, I mean, I went to McGill, studied politics. Like, I went on a roundabout route. I did theater on the side, even though I always knew it was something I wanted to do. I just didn't have the confidence to pursue it at that time. Yeah.
So was politics your major at McGill?
Yeah, I was like a major in politics and minor in Italian. Like,
okay.
It's very not acting.
And so you left McGill, and then what?
It's long but short. Moved to Vancouver.
Yeah.
Went to a film acting school for 6 months there, and then did more acting for film and TV there, and theater, and then moved to England, where I went to a proper, quote unquote, like drama school, theater school. Yeah. Where I got a master's, and then lived in London, UK for a while, and then moved to Toronto. Okay. Like 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. So pretty recently.
Yeah.
All right. Kaho, what's your theater origin story?
I guess it started with just loving to sing and dance to Disney princess songs when I was very young. So that's when it started.
Can I, before we go further, can I ask what your Disney princess was, or were you not picky?
I was not picky.
Okay.
It was like the entire album, just play it, performing in the living room. I was very shy, but at home I could do whatever.
Yeah.
But then I started performing in middle school and high school. This was back in Japan. It was like an after school drama club called, it's kind of a lame name, English Speaking Society. Was like, it's like a general term in Japan that lots of like high schools use, which is like super weird. But shortened for ESS. And so did lots of, major musicals like Mamma Mia and all these things. And then after moving to Montreal, it was, I did do the after school drama clubs and all of that. But at McGill, I wanted to get involved backstage. And I don't even remember what that instinct was. But the first show, I was an assistant stage manager, like not knowing anything at all what happens backstage. And I just jumped into it. My mentor, Marissa Lewis, just is the most amazing mentor ever. So she basically showed me what backstage looked like. And that just triggered this whole thing where I was like, okay, backstage is amazing. Like, you know that, like, as an audience member, you see actors and, performers, and you kind of think that that's everything, which was what I used to think. And then after being involved in that specific production, it was really eye-opening to see the entire process of, what directors do, stage management does, like all these designers. So yeah, that was just how it all started.
What were you studying at McGill?
English, drama, and theater, and econ was my other major.
You double majored?
I did a double major.
Okay.
It was good.
Did either of you, as you started to pursue theater, find anybody pushing back in your family or at school or anything like that?
Yep.
Both of you are nodding? Okay. Was that, like, obviously you're doing it, so what was the process of getting through that pushback like?
For me, it was definitely my parents. So they're traditional Japanese parents. Very traditional. My mom is a stay-at-home mom. My dad, has a 9-to-5, like really great job. So the expectations from when I was younger was, well, I don't know if this is like it is a typical Asian thing where like doctor or lawyer, like something like a great career was what was pretty much expected. But they knew my passion of doing theater, and they were fine until I was in university. But every summer or winter break, I would go home and they would say, so what are you doing after graduation? And I guess also there was that cultural thing where in Japan, if you go to a Japanese university, from when you're in your like third year, you start job hunting. So by the time you graduate, you have a job lined up.
Right.
And that's pretty much the job that you're going to have until you die.
Okay.
Like that's, you enter a company, you build up your career there, and that's just how it is. And that's how my parents grew up. So that was the expectation. So me not job hunting and doing theater in my third year they were just worried as parents. Like,
Sure.
what are you doing? Are you really going into the arts? Because obviously that's not going to be a lot of money. Can you self-sustain? Like, all these things. But yeah, like, I'm self-sufficient. Like, now, like, they do support it. But they don't verbally say things like, oh, I'm proud of you. Like, that's not something that they say, because it's just kind of the unspoken culture where it's kind of an approval if they don't say anything to you. Which is funny, but it's so true. Like, my parents, they won't say I've never heard my mom or my dad say I'm proud of you to me, but I know that they are, you know.
Right.
But yeah, cultural things.
Can I just say that the idea of like going into a company and that's the company I stay in till I die kind of gives me a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah. It's a big decision.
It's
and you're
massive.
You know, it's before going into society, but that's what's expected. And I know that times are changing, and I know I do have friends who have already quit their jobs and trying something else. Yeah. But it is still kind of, in a way, not usual to do those things. So yeah.
Sachi, what kind of pushback did you find yourself getting?
Similar. My parents, but specifically my mother, who is the Japanese one. Lots of pushback, and we had so many fights about it. And I remember I had summer after first year university, I had a summer job in Italy, and I'd have this 30-minute walk home from either work or like from a bar. I was 18, and I'd call my parents, my mom, and be like 9 p.m. their time, and the whole time it would just be us, like me trying to convince her, like acting, theater, and she's always like, no, and so many fights. But then now they're super supportive. Now it's flipped, and the turning point was when I moved to Vancouver after I graduated from McGill. I went to that film acting school for 6 months. And then they became supportive. And I asked her why, and she's like, oh, well, now I know you're serious about it. And and before I was like, what? But fair enough. Anyway, so they're both now like completely the opposite. Like they'll go see plays, and they'll like take a picture of the board of all the headshots of the actors and say like, looking forward to seeing your headshot up there. So supportive. It's really flipped, but I think it took me showing them, I say them, but it's really my mother. My dad is pretty secure. It took showing her that I was serious, I guess. I wish she told me that before. Yeah. But there we have it.
Did you guys go to see theater when you were kids?
Yeah.
I did. Most of it was in high school, because I went to that arts high school, and then Ottawa has 2 major theaters. One is NAC, and they had this like rush ticket program if you're a student. So it was $10 for any show if you got the ticket 2 hours in advance, type of thing. So I went all the time, mostly in high school, but you know, as a child too sometimes. So,
but aside from like when you were like, because you were shy, and they were taking you to theater, which by the way, did you ever feel like saying, listen, this theater thing is your fault? Like you put me in theater and you thought I wasn't going to fall in love with it?
I might have said that. I can't remember, but probably. Yeah, totally is their fault.
But you sounded a little tentative about whether you saw
I'm just thinking about the times. I think it was more ballet. I went to see a lot of ballet shows when I was very young, just because my sister used to do lots of ballet, so we would go support her. So the Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, all these things. When I was younger, not too much, but after I had I got the passion for musical theater, if we went on a trip to New York, it was always, I need to see a Broadway show. And like, my parents don't love musical theater. Right. My mom really thinks that it's stupid. So for her, my sister and my mom would go see a ballet show, and my dad would come with me to see a Broadway show. So that's kind of how it worked out. But yeah, I feel like I see more of theater after I went into university, and after learning more about it, not just to support my friends, but I do want to branch out and see different shows. So yeah.
Do you remember what the first Broadway musical you saw was?
Apparently it was Beauty and the Beast. Okay. When I was 6, but I have no memory whatsoever.
What's the first one that you remember?
It was it was like a world tour of In the Heights.
Okay.
They came to Tokyo and my friend had tickets, and yeah, she just took me, and it was just insanely good.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much died. And I was like, okay, this is my passion. Like I know that like down the line I want to do something in the theater. Was my thought when I saw it.
Nice. Is this your first Fringe Festival this year?
It's first time for me acting in one.
Okay.
I directed and produced a show in the Vancouver Fringe before, but first time acting.
Okay. How about you, Kaho?
For me, Toronto Fringe is my second time. Last year, I was the production manager for The Joy of Sax. So that was, more managing. And that was actually my first Toronto theater that I did. And when I was in Montreal, I was actually one of the venue technicians for the Montreal Fringe. So, yeah, pretty much backstage technical stuff.
Cool. What was your venue in Montreal?
It was, the name. It was the church one. It was, they converted a Portuguese, I think it's this year too. I don't know. Oh, Santa Cruz is the name of the venue. They convert a Portuguese church into a theater, which is insane. Like, we have to build everything.
Yeah.
So
when I was in a few years ago, I did Montreal Fringe, and it was a World Cup year.
Okay.
And so trying to see a show at that venue and then like leave when there was a soccer game was just insane. So anyway.
Yeah, it was a fun venue. I had so much fun, but also all the technicians were like, why can't we rent a different theater instead of just making the whole thing from scratch? But I loved it.
Nice. Did you get in on the lottery, or were you waitlisted, or?
I got in. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
which was like I started writing the script beforehand, but that was kind of a wake up call to finish writing the script.
Yeah.
But actually, because of my status in Canada, I was in we're in the international category actually. So I think the odds were better.
Yes. Yeah.
Compared to if I were in the national or Ontario.
The Ontario one is a really difficult one.
It's insane.
Ontario 60 is pretty insane.
Yeah.
It's like something like almost 350 on average entries for like 60 slots or something ridiculous like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw the PDF of all the, numbers, lottery numbers and the production names, and it was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So what made it international? The content, or that you...
It was me. It was basically me not being Canadian yet. I'm working on my PR. So I'm not a citizen here. Right. So that just, not the content or anything. I entered in as an international.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. How? What's the process of getting ready for Fringe been like for you? Because it can be pretty overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming. Like, I am the writer and director, but also the producer in a way.
Yeah.
I have such like talented actors and like a very dedicated crew, which is awesome. But even like I knew a couple people in Toronto in theater, but I did want to meet new people. So just even from the hiring process, to begin with, auditions. And I also wanted to document the process. And that was something that I was thinking about from early on. And actually my significant other, Rutger, he is the head of marketing, which is, I personally don't love working with like significant others on a theater show in a creative setting. I hate it. I've worked with couples and it's just like doesn't work and I hated it. So I made it a ground rule that like creative aspect and directing and all of that is me, but I do need help with marketing, and he does marketing for a living.
Sure.
So he's been super supportive and giving me fresh ideas because he's never done theater. So as an outside person, he does have lots of cool ideas of what to do for marketing. And we discussed that, we should definitely make it show friends and family what the process is.
Yeah.
So I have been documenting from day one, from like the lottery or like from when I was writing, just being on Instagram, Facebook. And that really helps too, because I've had lots of friends and people who I haven't talked to in years would just message me and say, hey, you're doing something really cool. Is there any way I can help?
Yeah.
So just like, I know that social media can be, like cruel and not great at times, but it's great because I'm reconnecting with people that are important to me who I haven't talked to in a long time. And I've had lots of help from them.
I think one of the interesting things is the fact that you're documenting this process, because the average theater goer, the average person who, again, they see what's on stage, not what goes behind, just much like you did when you were younger. And so the process of putting a show together is like magic.
Yeah.
It's like a thing that they don't see. So it's kind of fascinating to give for people who don't know, to give them a window into how that works.
Definitely.
Yeah. Can I ask you about the name of your company, Human Burrito, and where that comes from?
Yeah. So this was before I entered my name into the lottery. So we had to come up with a company name. I wanted it to be very original. I wanted it to create some kind of like fuzzy feeling. I love that feeling, like the comfort and the fuzziness. So I was just, for days I was trying to think of like a good word for it. And I love naps. I love to nap. That's kind of my self-care time. So I would always be like kind of wrapped around in a blanket. And I was like, oh, I feel like a human burrito. It's something that I just said. And I was like, oh, human burrito. And I was like, that's pretty fuzzy and nice. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
All right. Sachi, you were, from performer's point of view, getting ready for the Toronto Fringe, has any of the stress hit you yet, or is that probably going to come closer to?
It'll come closer to, I think. It's been very, relaxing, but, like, creatively fulfilling. We're taking our time, exploring a lot of the text and the culture, and, it's been very, fluid, our rehearsals, so it's been great.
Nice.
The stress will come later.
What's your venue?
Randolph.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's a big venue.
It is a big venue.
It's a big venue.
It's a big venue.
Yeah. How do you feel about filling that venue?
Good.
Yeah.
I think we'll do good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And are you happy? Like, what's your schedule look like? Are you good?
I think it's good.
Nice.
Because, I know, because I was the venue technician in Montreal, I know how insane it is to create schedule and all of that. But even taking that into consideration, the times, yes, we have 1 or 2 days. That's kind of random times, like starting at 2 p.m.
Everybody's got to have a couple of those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy.
Yeah.
Those 2 weeks.
Yeah. I had a thought and I lost it. So whatever. Are you? What's your? I mean, you have somebody who's helping you with promotion.
Yes.
So, do you know what your promotional process looks like yet, or?
Yeah, we've started. Well, I guess the big main thing is documenting the process is really helping. So we're very active on Instagram, Facebook. We try to have one photo from each rehearsal, just to document everything. What else? We've had a pretty good success. We do have a GoFundMe going on as our fundraiser. But I think the best way to promote shows is to just talk to people about it, is what I've been feeling. My friend Kim is organizing this event called Skip the Small Talk. It's this event where you just come to this event and you basically sit down at a table with 3 other strangers. There's a deck of cards with questions on it, very deep questions. For example, what does love mean to you?
Okay.
Or what is your most cherished memory? And you just talk with strangers. And I've went to a couple of those meetups, and I've met really cool people around the world. And in the end, I do talk about my show because it is dear to me. It's my passion project, and people are really interested, and they would want to connect, and they want to be updated to actually come see the show. So I've made good friends that way, but I've, had great conversations about the show. So, I mean, I know it's not really a huge, marketing campaign, but I like that human connection, just talking to people. And it's something that I love. So yeah.
But on the other side, that's giving you a lot of experience pitching your show to people.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is again, another one of because Toronto is a flyer town. So when Fringe is on, like being able to walk up to people and talk about the show, you already have experience knowing what your show's pitch is, which is super helpful.
That's true.
Yeah. have you considered the flyering lines as part of your promotional process, or?
Yes. Yeah. Well, we actually had to submit something for Fringe the other day, so I kind of had like what the message is with the whole internal cultural struggle. Yeah. But yeah, it does help talking to a bunch of people. Yeah. Like not just these events, but if you go to a party, you just talk about it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's been helping.
What are you most looking forward to about doing the show at Fringe?
Well, related to the previous question too. Yeah. Like, because this show is so uniquely about my personal cultural experience as well. Yeah. I really look forward to sharing that with friends and family. Like even my parents don't really know what it's like to be mixed or to have this. I mean, my mom does a bit because she's lived in Canada for so many years, but I look forward to sharing that with people. It's really like an insider's view, and this is probably the play that's like hits close to home, the closest to home that I've ever done. Okay. So I look forward to that. Yeah. Showing the world like what our experience is like. Nice, just quite unique and not that common. So.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Kaho, what are you looking forward to?
Definitely that. And I guess I am looking forward to opening night, just sitting down and enjoying the show. I mean, yeah, like as much as I love the process and everything, it is pretty stressful, you know, just going through the whole thing. So just, yeah, I'm looking forward to sitting down and just enjoying what all the designers, what the actors, you know, collaborated on. I am also looking forward to showing it to my parents who are flying in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. Nice. They are being supportive, and it's pretty much the first time I'm showing a show to them. The last time they were in Canada after they left was for my graduation, and it was for my graduation. So, you know, I wasn't I wasn't working on a show then, but this time it's, you know, my project, my baby. Yeah. Something that I wrote, something that I directed. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to I am also scared, you know, like I don't know what their reaction is going to be like, but I'm excited to see what that's going to look like, feel like.
You know, from another point of view, I mean, it's not just your parents, because you never know you don't know how reviewers are going to react. You don't know how an audience is going to react. You can't know until it's done. So that's like the theater experience is like, how are people going to react to this thing when it's done? So that's definitely terrifying and also exhilarating.
Yeah. And I also just having conversations with people not, you know, like in Canada, if you're not native to the land, you're from somewhere. You are an immigrant. And you do have that cultural background. So when I talk about my show to friends and people I just meet, they say that, oh, wow, like that's really interesting, because although I'm not Japanese, I feel that, like, you know, like some people have an Italian and Greek background, and there's that cultural struggle going on at home. And yeah, just creating that conversation has been very cool. And I feel like it'll continue throughout the process, and definitely during shows, meeting the audience members, going to see other Fringe shows. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, awesome.
My parents will be coming too, but from Ottawa.
a little bit, not quite as far.
Not quite as far. But like elements of your family are in the show too. Yeah, that must be nerve-wracking.
I know. So it is a storytelling sprinkled with fiction. Right. So there are things that my dad has said to me, like advices that he's given me that are in the play. So I think he will catch that, you know. Yeah. So it's like, it's not him on stage, but it kind of is, and it's. Yeah.
Does that make you nervous?
It makes me very nervous. So nervous. But you know what? It's happening.
Well, that's the thing, right? There's all you can do is do it. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Well, thank you so much, you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so fun.
This has been a Homebody Productions production.